comforting and snuggly, and also doesn't come with a side of guilt. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books, and today I'm doing a tag video. I can't remember the last time I did a tag video, and this is probably quite telling. I was tagged in this tag in April last year by Scott and Nell over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. This is the Moody Reader tag. I believe the original was by Brittany over at Slanted Spines. I haven't checked her channel out yet, so I don't even know if she's still making videos. But I will link her original video and Scott and Nell's video and put all the questions in the description box if you want to do this too. In terms of tagging people, I actually haven't put any thought into this, and I don't know who's done it because, like I said, this has been sitting there waiting for me to do for nearly a year basically. So I'm just going to tag anyone that watches this video, and I know that is such a cop-out and I do apologize, but if you comment, then I will tag you, and then it kind of makes it a bit more official, because these are the sort of tags that I really like. It kind of gets into who the reader is, and I would love to hear about who you are as a reader as well. So let's get into the questions. Question 1 is, do you consider yourself a mood reader? And if I had answered this question when I was tagged last year, I would have probably said no. I am usually very much a planner. I usually have my reading for the year planned out at the start, in line with some year-long reading challenges and things like that I do. But after my mental health kind of collapsed at the end of last year, I've decided to take a bit more of a chill approach with this. Not that my reading necessarily had anything to do with my health, but because I fell so far from my plans, I think this year I just went, well, I'm going to have no plans. I'm just going to pick up books that I want to read when I want to read them. And I am enjoying that so far. I don't know if it really has the kind of push to make reading a priority the same way that having a plan does. But at the same time, I don't think I'm like falling too far from my usual. Sorry, my dog is snoring on my bed. So sorry if you hear that. Yeah, I don't think I'm reading particularly less than I would do if I had a plan. In terms of reading for mood, I might get into this in a later question actually, but so far I don't even know if it would be mood reading or just whatever catches my eye whenever I browse my unread books. For the purposes of answering this, yes, I am a mood reader. Number 2 is, do you set TBR lists and do you stick to them? So I've kind of covered that in the last question, but I'll go a bit further into that. So for the past kind of 4 years, I have had a spreadsheet that had all the prompts for reading challenges and the books that I was going to read matched alongside them. And up until last year, I pretty much did stick to those lists. And I really do like reading that way most of the time. I think my problem at the moment is that I'm just struggling to concentrate, struggling to motivate myself, and having a whole year planned out would just feel a bit overwhelming. But I do like having a TBR, and I might go back to having TBRs after a few months of this kind of more unstructured way of doing things, but maybe less rigid, more like Danny at Spinelli Speaks calls them a pile of possibilities, and I definitely think that is more the approach that I would go to if I was to put a little bit more structure back into things. I am doing the TBR tackle that Kieran from KD Books is hosting, but that's only 1 book a month, so it's not a big ask. But yeah, in general, I do like having a list and ticking things off it, and I think my reading is no different to that. Question number 3 is, do books affect you emotionally? Does the mood of a book rub off on you? And I think it does depend on the book, doesn't it? It depends on the book, depends on the character, and I guess it depends a bit, or probably quite a lot actually, on where you are emotionally at the point that you read it. I will say sad books, in fact, definitely do rub off on me more than, say, a funny book. But that might just be because I read a lot more sad books, or at least emotionally complex books than I do read humour and things like that. But even then, I can read a sad book, put it down, and get on with my day in the same way that I was before. So then it really comes down to like the quality of the writing, the bonds that I've kind of felt with any of the characters, and things like that. And then if I'm in a sad place, or there's something in the book that speaks to something I've been through or I'm going through, then I will definitely connect with that a bit more, and there might be like a bit of a mood hangover in those instances. But I don't really shy away from that, because I think it's a comfort a lot of the time, and it can be quite cathartic, or it can feel quite nice to be seen, even when you're feeling bad. Question number 4 is, when you're feeling sad, what do you read? Or do you not read when sad? And I don't think I would particularly pick up a book just because I was feeling sad. I never have in the past. Potentially, maybe I'll do that as I'm doing this mood reading this year, but it's not something that I've ever done before. Like I said, I pick books out of what I think is going to be most interesting, not necessarily what's anything to do with where I am at that point. As to whether do I not read when I'm sad, I probably read less, because when I am sad I find it hard to concentrate. But that's not to say that I wouldn't read at all. I probably just am motivated to pick up a book less often. Question number 5 is, most often do you use reading to escape, to learn, or to critically reflect? Yes. I do all of those things. Probably less, I was going to say less around escape, but maybe that's just on a conscious level. I think unconsciously reading probably is a bit of an escape. For me, I've never been the sort of person that could meditate. Like, my head I've just never been able to do that. But for me, reading is a bit like meditation, because that's the one time that I really feel, and it doesn't happen every time I read, but I do feel like I shut other thoughts off and just am able to focus on the story, lose myself in that a bit. And so I guess there is an element of escape in my reading. But I think what's missing in this question is, do you read for fun? And I think that's probably the biggest reason why I read. I would most often rather read than go to the cinema or anything like that. It is a form of entertainment for me, but definitely the learning is a big part of why I read. I read to understand different people, different cultures, different time points in history, things like that. And just basically learn about what it is about being human, that connects us all, or the differences, and just to really kind of fully understand that more is definitely a huge part of why I read. Critically reflect, and I guess this means to critically reflect on the book itself. And no, I enjoy critically reflecting on what I've read, but that is not my primary reason why I would pick a book or why I choose to read. It's just a like another level of this hobby that I have. I like to review books, I like to talk about books, and if there are parts of a book that maybe I don't agree with, or maybe that have made me consider certain things in a different way, then I will include that in my review. But that's just my way of processing what I've read, rather than the reason why I read. Question number 6 is, what is a book that made you laugh out loud? And so I thought straight away of one particular book, which is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I don't tend to read a lot of humour books, but yeah, there are, you know, just because a book isn't a humour book doesn't mean it won't have amusing parts in it. And I think this is probably quite a good example of that, because this book is, it deals with some really tough stuff, but at points it's hilarious. And I think that's because Gail Honeyman can really nail a character, you know, from a scruffy IT tech to a smarmy nightclub singer, and right the way through to a sassy black cat. It's not just, you know, in the characters' voices, but she also nails the little details of how they move or how they act. And particularly as these are all seen through the filter of Eleanor, you really get that kind of, because she's so awkward and she's frustrating and she just doesn't understand people, and that can sometimes lend itself to humour quite well. And her herself, although she's actually quite unlikable, you can't fail to root for her, and grow to really feel for her. And you know, as this story goes on, there's loads of little quirks in it that lighten the mood, and yes, did make me laugh out loud. Because like I said, it's a tough, upsetting book. It's about loneliness and the impact of childhood trauma, but it's warm and touching in its approach, and the importance of human connection and kindness is kind of the undercurrent of this. And I think because it is set in Glasgow, and we do have a particular type of humour here in the west coast of Scotland, I think that does shine through quite well in this book. Question number 7, on the other hand, is a book that has made you cry, or if you don't normally cry at books, one that's really moved you. And I'm not a huge crier at books. There were a few last year, Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Life, but probably Tish Delaney's Before My Actual Heart Breaks. I don't think I can count the number of times that book made me cry. And maybe that's because I related to the main character Mary on quite a raw level, or maybe, you know, I just really felt for the loss of her dreams, of the girl that she was at the start of the book, and how different things could have ended up in, like, even in the life that she finds herself living, if she had only realised what was right under her nose. And I really felt the sense of the passing of time and how you can't get it back in this book, and it really touched me. It delves into the damage of what can be caused when someone is made to feel worthless and small, and how, you know, if they've got a lack of self-worth, they can be caged in by that, and then they put up walls to protect themselves from potential rejection or judgment, and how we can be so negative inside ourselves that we can blinker ourselves to the opportunities and the relationships that are right in front of us. I felt like that book is really rich. So I haven't even said what it's about. So we meet Mary as a teenager. She's got quite a cold and abusive home life. Her mother is just a bitch. Like, her only real concern is to be seen as the most pious woman in the community. And it's set in Ireland during the Troubles, so there's segregation and military occupation, but also Mary's a teenager and all she wants to do is just snog her boyfriend at the bus stop, and she dreams of what her life's going to be and how she can escape, and all of this comes crashing down when she finds herself pregnant and unmarried at the age of 16, and so all those dreams just get snatched away from her and her mother, and also that the religious control of the time and the fear of judgment of the society. So she finds herself on a very different path, and we follow her over her adult life as she she settles down with what she's got, but she can never really forget that she's missed the chance to live the life that she really wants. You know, although there's no big trauma at the core of this book necessarily, that is the kind of devastation that I can really relate to, because it's that little chipping away, those senses of regrets. And I always think regret is a really toxic emotion, but it's one that you can't really control. And also that lack of self-esteem as well, and it all combines to make Mary a character that, okay, yeah, sometimes I want to shake her, but also I found her really relatable. And I think that's when a book can really move me emotionally, is that it's those books that get to the core of human emotions, with a character that you can really relate to. And when you're seeing their pain, you're feeling their pain, that's definitely where the tears come. Question number 8 is, what is a book that you didn't even know how you felt about? I've had a few of these over the years. What's that J.M. Coetzee book called? Disgrace. Yeah, that was definitely one. But what I went to straight away when I looked at this question is Lanark by Alistair Gray. I read this in 2019 and I could not decide if it was a head fuck or if it was just a mess, whether it was impressive or it was just a big rambling rant. Like, I think I liked it. So it had been buckling my shelf for a long time. It's huge, and I don't know why I bought it in the first place. Probably because it is a Scottish book and it's set in Glasgow. Well, kind of. So the subtitle is A Life in 4 Books, and so some of those books are set in Glasgow. They tell the story of a man named Thor in 1950s, but then some of the others tell the story of Lanark, which is kind of like a parallel universe version of Thor living in a parallel universe version of Glasgow. So Lanark is the man and Unthank is the city. And in this one, like, a year could last a minute, a day could last 25 hours. So I flew through the story of Thor, probably because that's the more rooted in reality version. I actually really hated Thor, but I really loved reading about the Glasgow of my grandparents' youth, with the trams and the tenements and all the landmarks and that sort of thing. And that's what really sold this story to me. So Lanark's part, there were parts that I liked, but I'm not really a sci-fi reader, and I did struggle with certain aspects of those bits of the book. What I did enjoy, like, this book has a lot of social and political commentary in it, which, even though it was published like in 1981, so like over 40 years ago, it was still depressingly relevant today. So I enjoyed that, but then in the same breath, some of that got very dry and just seemed to be an excuse for the author to show how big and clever he was, which I often feel is a trait in these kind of like magnum opus works from male authors. I'm thinking like Herman Melville's Moby Dick, and numerous Russian writers, and that was a bit of a slog. I had to plow through it. I think it was worth the effort, but I'm not sure I would do it again. Question number 9, are you more likely to read on a sunny day or a cloudy day? And to be honest, I don't know if likeliness comes into it. I'm likely to read most days, but I definitely do prefer reading when the weather is really bad. There's just, I mean, we all say it, there's something really lovely, something so cozy when the rain's battering the windows outside and you're cozy in your blanket, you've probably got your PJs on and a hot chocolate, and you're just curling up with a book like that. That is mwah. But I also like to read on a sunny beach. But I think if we're talking about reading at home, I definitely prefer reading when the weather is bad, just because it gets rid of the guilt. Because we don't get many like glorious sunny days in Scotland where you could read outside. And I am very much more an indoors person. So when it's a sunny day, I do feel guilty if I am sitting inside reading when I really should be making the most of the outside. So definitely reading on a crappy weather day is just comforting and snuggly, and also doesn't come with a side of guilt. Question number 10 is, how do you usually set the mood when reading? Music, lights, smells, etc. And no. I can read anytime, any place, anywhere. I used to be able to read with headphones in, music blasting, didn't matter. And I don't know if it's an age thing or if it's related to my mental health and my difficulties concentrating and things, but I have to read in silence now. I can try and read, like if if someone's watching the telly and I'm not interested in what they're watching and I want to read, I can try, but it does distract me. I can read when the children are playing, but again, that can distract me mainly because they fight all the fucking time. But yeah, my ideal is just perfect silence, maybe with some nature, like real nature sounds, not recorded ones. Like if I can hear the rain, like today, or birds and things, that's quite nice. But yeah, definitely need quiet. I guess I kind of do set the scene in that I like to have a cup of coffee or a hot chocolate or something, and somewhere comfy to sit. But I don't really put an awful lot of effort into that. I think I would read a lot less if I had to set the scene every time I wanted to read. Number 11 is, can you leap from book to book, or do you need a buffer between them? And yeah, I can definitely leap from book to book. I don't need a buffer. Like I can finish the last page of a book and straight away pick up another one if I've got the time to do that. Doesn't bother me at all. I know some people can struggle with starting a book as well. I've heard a lot of people say that, and that they hate starting a book. And I guess sometimes I can feel like particularly if I've read a really great book and then I pick up the next one, I'm like, how's this going to go? But I'll just dive straight in and do it. And I can have different books on the go at the same time. I don't tend to do that very often, but like if I've got an audio book on, I tend to only listen to that in bed at night, so I'll have a book to read during the day. And if I'm doing like Dewey's 24-hour readathon, then I will switch from book to book for the whole 24 hours as a way to keep myself engaged and interested. So I suppose that probably says quite a lot about how my approach to reading. I think if I was the sort of person that maybe needed some decompression time between books, I probably just wouldn't take part in Dewey's 24-hour readathon. So probably the only time that you could ever call me agile is my ability to hop from book to book. So now I've answered the questions, I'm actually even more interested to see what your answers would be. So definitely please consider yourself tagged if you haven't already done this. If you have done this, let me know as well so I can go and check it out. Like I said, I'm super nosy about the way that other people read, so it'd be really cool to see what your thoughts are. And until next time, bye! Stop licking your butt. If you must lick your butt, can you lick your butt quietly?